Welcome to another episode of Unlocking the Mind Behind Make More, Work Less. Hi, my name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor speaker, and also a best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock the potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on Unlocking the Mind, we talk about another cognitive bias. And the reason why I do this show is so that we can better understand how our minds work. We can better understand how we make decisions, build relationships, and also avoid certain cognitive traps so that we don't fall into those situations that we want to get out of. Now, for today's cognitive bias, we're going to be talking about normalcy bias or normality bias. And what exactly is that? So let me ask you a question. Have you ever driven your car and after a while driving, all of a sudden you hear or you might sit there and go, you know what? It's probably fine. It will go away eventually. And you just keep on driving. And then all of a sudden you hear this bang and it's, now I really have to go and fix the car. Well, if you haven't put up your hand on that situation, how about this scenario? You're working away at your office and all of a sudden you hear the fire alarm and you go, you know what? It's probably a drill. It's probably okay. I'm just going to finish off this email. I'm sure lots of people have put their hands up because they go through drills all the time. And unfortunately, that is normalcy bias. And when it comes to normalcy bias, it's what a lot of people who goes through crisis and certain events that are unfortunate, that causes them to have that mentality of, you know what, it's going to be fine. Gunshots is probably fireworks. Gunshots is probably an audio system that just went haywire. Maybe it's some other thing that is going to come very, very unfortunately, but you kind of underestimate what that result's going to be. And that's because it's not normal. It's not something we approach every single day. It's not something that we always face every single day. And hence the normalcy bias, which is basically the disbelief or minimizing a threat warning, underestimating the likelihood of a disaster and also how that disaster would actually affect us in our lives and us in the future. So that is normalcy bias. So what happens? Well, the thing is, our minds are actually protecting us to have normalcy bias. And the reason why is if our minds actually react to every loud bang, to every little happenstance and all that kind of stuff, we're going to be very alert all the time. We'll be exhausted. Our energy is always going to be in our brains, thinking that we have to either fight or flight, always have to protect ourselves, running from one thing or another, only to find that, oh, it's something that's always normal, or oh, it's something that's not that big of a deal. So it's actually protecting us from overreacting to certain things and also protecting us from being paranoid about life all the time. So that is why normalcy bias is within our minds so that we can actually live our lives normally kind of thing, right? Now, the thing is, because of that, sometimes we underprepare for certain situations and we're not expecting something that comes, and therefore we may be shocked or put in a very unfortunate incident. And this is very, very common in a lot of crises. If you listen to some of the reports and some of the survivors who actually talk about certain events that has happened, they always say, well, I didn't think it was going to be anything. I stayed behind and just finished off my email. Oh, I didn't think it was going to be anything. And therefore I just proceeded on with my day. The thing is, every day you wake up, you kind of have this path that you've outlined for yourself. You wake up, you do your exercise, you have your breakfast, you go to work, you do your work, you finish whatever it is, you go to lunch, go back to work, do some emails, call some people, meet some friends, and you drive back home. And basically that path is already laid out for you at the very beginning. But within that path, if anything changes, if anything out of normal happens, your mind is so fixated on the path that you've laid out for yourself at the beginning that it's very, very difficult for your brain to switch gears and go, okay, we need to change something because this isn't normal. And therefore, that is how normalcy biases happens, because our minds are very fixated on our normal path. So how do we go against this? Because if we're constantly falling into the trap of normalcy bias, then we will not be able to protect ourselves if something actually happens that we need to run away from. And that is where situational awareness is very important. You have to be aware of your surroundings. You have to be aware of what's going on. And sometimes we just have to train our brains to be able to react fast. We just have to train our brains to assess certain situations objectively and kind of choose the path of it's better safe than sorry. If you see somebody kind of sketchy or somebody who could be problematic walk into a restaurant, it might be time for you to assess and go, you know what, it's probably better for me to leave the restaurant instead of staying there just in case. And the thing is, the more we put ourselves into different situations, the more we put ourselves into different environments, we're able to assess and train our brains more and think faster on our feet. Test our brains with different scenarios, test our brains with different questions, and therefore we're able to assess faster and quicker. The other thing we can do is always kind of trust our gut. Think if your gut has any kind of circumstance where they go, you know what, here's a warning sign, it's probably a good idea to follow your gut and put yourself out of that situation so that you can actually protect yourself. Normally, it would take a person 7 to 8 seconds to kind of swap over that mindset and reassess the situation and kind of put themselves outside of that normalcy bias. So spend a little more time to just think about it and then react and then make your decision so that you don't have to fall into that trap all the time. So that is normalcy bias, and I hope you got some great value from today's episode. And if you did, please go back to some of my other episodes on Unlocking the Mind where we talk about a whole bunch of different cognitive bias. And if you like this show, then please follow the Make More Mind Bites, the Mastermind Bites, and also the Peak Potential Success Show. And thank you very much for liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting. I love seeing your comments. And until next time, today is the day to unlock your potential. We'll see you later.